Hey, I'm Justin. I'm the new Director of Franchise Sales for FiiZ. And I've got Joel on here, who's been with FiiZ for 10 years now. And about 10 years, right?
Over 10 years.
Over 10 years.
Yep.
Okay. And so he's been through the highs, the lows, the highs, and we've got a lot of questions to ask him. But really, this podcast is to help you understand what the business model is, what the qualifications are, and what we're looking for in franchisees. So jumping into this first question is if Joel, if you could just kind of go over with the background of the company, how it got started, the vision of it moving forward, and just kind of go from there.
Yeah, definitely. I love talking about this. So mixing drinks is not a new concept. It's been around for a long time. And so I actually grew up in a small town called Fruit Heights. It's right next to Kaysville, just north up here. My mom grew up in that town. My grandma grew up in that town. We have deep roots in that area. Well, my mom, she's actually a local historian. She runs the museum up there in Kaysville. And growing up, she would always tell us all the stories of her growing up and our grandparents and everything else. And there was a story that she would always tell that kind of just stayed with me. And it was of a business that was in Kaysville, and it was called the Kaysville Drug, but it had soda fountains in it.
When was this?
So this was back in the late 50s, early 60s, right in that range. Okay. And if you actually go to my West Kaysville store that I opened up, I actually have pictures of this soda shop back in the day.
Cool. Yeah.
And so if you're ever around West Kaysville, you can go and look that up. But she would always talk about how much fun it was, and it was kind of the place to be. You know, all the friends would go there, and and back then it was just, I'm going to go put a little bit of cherry in my Coke or, something. But they were able to go and hang out and have this, this fun atmosphere. And so she always told these stories growing up. Well, fast forward 40 years, I have an older brother that's 4 years older than me. He was an executive chef, got his master's degree in Italy, moved back to the States. He was a personal chef for a billionaire up in Portland, but then decided he wanted to raise his family here in Utah. All the rest of the family were here. And so he moved back to Utah, and he got a job with one of the nation's largest catering companies, Compass Group.
Okay.
And started out in handling some of their restaurants and that, and then worked his way up into more of a desk job. And he hated every minute of it. Mm-hmm. That's not why he got into food, was to be behind a desk, and so he just wasn't really happy per se. And so he wanted to do something on the side, more for his sanity than anything, but just something that he was passionate about. But almost not necessarily something that was going to make him any money, but just something for his sanity, kind of a hobby. So he was like, do I open a bakery? Do I open a taco shop?
Yeah.
Well, he remembered the stories also my mom told of a soda shop. And he was chatting with one of his neighbors about, hey, I want to do this. And his neighbor had started multiple companies. And so kind of just picking his brain a little bit of what to do. Well, in talking about this, they kind of formed the partnership. So my brother, his wife, and then one of his neighbors and his wife. And they decided on the soda concept. Mm-hmm. They were all soda drinkers. They loved mixing it in and doing different flavors. And they said, yeah, let's do it.
Yeah.
So they opened the first store in Bountiful, Utah. And this was about 10 years and 5 months, right around that. And I helped them open that store up, helped do some of the build out, helped train staff with them. And then I was there for the grand opening. And I remember when we opened the doors, we didn't know what it was going to be. Literally, my brother and even his business partner thought it was going to be just a little bit of supplemental, thing, just more a hobby. And the reaction that the community had was amazing.
And it just blew up.
It just blew up. And from day one, the doors opened up, and it was families coming in. It was kids. It was kind of the same stories that my mom was telling was happening again in the store. And people were coming in. It was just so exciting to them. And our menu was small. When we first opened, I think we had 18 drinks. Yeah. And one thing that I thought was really cool was most of the drinks that you see on our menu now came from customers that came in those first few weeks. The employees we originally had said, hey, let's add grapefruit in with Mountain Dew, and they would create something, and if it ended up being a good product, we let them name it, and now it's on the menu. So there's always deep ties into kind of the community side, and when I saw that, I knew that this was my calling. I had to get in with FiiZ.
Okay.
So I go.
And also with like that same concept of the store before, like in the 50s, where it was a place to hang out. Is that also something that you saw with that first store?
Exactly, and that's what made me want to open my own FiiZ. Was just that, because it wasn't just the dynamic of my brother, his business partner, myself. It was the customers coming in. It was the employees, and it was just kind of this.
And it's a cool environment.
Yeah,
it's where they want to be.
Yeah, exactly. And so I knew that I wanted to do that. I was doing a few other things and ended up putting them on pause. And I went and signed a lease in Kaysville without even telling my brother. So then I had the awkward conversation of going back to him and his business partner saying, "Hey, I signed a lease already. Can we franchise?"
Yeah.
They weren't thinking about franchising in that moment, and I kind of forced the hand a little bit.
Yeah.
And just because I wanted to be a part of it. And so 4 months after they opened their first store, I opened the first franchise location in Kaysville. And the rest is history. And what's crazy is the feeling that I had on the grand opening of my brother's first store is what drew more people to the franchise model. So when I opened the Kaysville store, customers that were coming in to that store had that same feeling that I felt and said, "I want to be a part of this. Are you guys franchising?" And it just blew up.
Okay, so it blew up from there. Have you seen over the last 10 years where it's kind of gone high, gone low, gone high?
Yeah, no, that's a really good point. In the early days, and the first 6-7 years, whatever, it didn't matter where we opened a store. It just felt like you opened it up and people came.
It's just a great business model.
People
love what you're doing, love the drinks, and so it's kind of been printing money for a lot of it.
Exactly. And then I always hate to bring this part up because there was a lot of businesses that struggled during COVID, but those were our best years. Yeah. And a lot of it was because a lot of places were closed down. It was something that was simple, not very expensive, that would bring families to us. So we actually had a really good time in COVID. But then, we have started seeing, obviously with, the economy the way it is, competition, things like that. We have seen dips here and there. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. And so let's see, we had a big acquisition a couple years ago. You were all a part of that.
I'm glad you mentioned that because that was actually going to be the next little piece of my story was we blew up, FiiZ did, and it was organically, and it was just, we didn't do any kind of marketing or anything. It was people just coming out of the woodwork saying, we want to be a part of this. And we almost grew too fast. And from day one, because of that growth and how it just exploded, we've almost been playing catch up ever since. And so it just feels like we were always just a little bit, trying to, keep up with that growth. And my brother and his business partner realized that. And they knew that at some point, if FiiZ was going to continue to grow, that they were either going to need to go and get massive capital, or they were going to have to sell it to that next, that next company that was going to be able to take it to that next level. Well, 2 years ago, it was actually 2 years ago, this last June, they sold the company to Stena, which is a local company, locally family-owned company here in Utah. But they have been the ones that have been able to take FiiZ to that next step, because my brother, his business partner, were always kind of playing catch up. There was that moment where they just said, if FiiZ is going to be what we want it to be, somebody else needs to do this. Right. And you see that with a lot of different concepts in that. And
it's been a good experience. Like I think the Stena Group is who hired me, and I came on, I interviewed with like 6 different people, and I was just completely blown away with all the people that they have steering this FiiZ ship right now. We have some incredible experts in each of these departments, running their departments, and it's really amazing. But I guess my question is, was all the franchisees very excited about this acquisition? And if they were initially, are they still excited about this acquisition?
Anytime you change, especially complete ownership change, there's always a little bit of, there's some nerves that come with that. Mm-hmm. And so I think initially the franchisees that were out there they just didn't know what that next chapter was.
Yeah.
But now that they've seen Stena and they've seen what you saw when you came in and did your interviews, that they have an extensive team in all sorts of different areas of expertise, whether it's supply chain, whether it's marketing, whether it's sales, and we now have the infrastructure that we can support the franchisees the way that they need to be and what they should have. And the franchisees we had before Stena took over, they also saw and they also knew that we were kind of playing this kind of catch up, with them. So it wasn't something that they weren't savvy to. And so when Stena came on, they were also excited, knowing that it was going to take a company like that to get FiiZ to that next level.
Right. But there was going to be some awkward transitioning.
Yeah.
Restructuring. I think from what I've seen, a lot of the franchisees kind of hoped that things were going to be dramatically better, and revenues were going to increase almost overnight. And it's just taken a little bit longer than what they would have expected. But right now is really a good time to hop into FiiZ, where we've got all these experts heading their departments, and there's so many great initiatives and plans coming down the pipeline that FiiZ a couple years ago versus a couple years from now is going to look way different. And I think the future is just very bright with FiiZ. Another thing too is they haven't focused huge on franchise development for the last couple years, and I think a lot of that is just getting this business model running the way that it should. And even with having a downtrend, which I think is what we should talk about next, that's kind of where we're at right now, coming off of COVID, where things blew up again, where it was that other high, and now we're kind of coming down here. But it's something that we have the right people on the ship, and now we can see the river is a little bit lower than it was in the past, and we can see certain obstructions. We can now come in and clean those things up so the water can flow better. And so now when we go in and the revenue, the next high that comes, we'll be able to capture even more of that revenue. So just kind of setting everything up for success, which is another reason why I love where I'm at right now.
I've been kind of smiling, while you've been saying this, because I've lived this, I've gone through this, and I've seen kind of this transition, and I am so excited about this brand. Before Stena came in, I literally was wearing probably 50 different hats. I was over supply chain. I was over, even marketing. I was over compliance. I was over support to the franchisees. And if you wear that many hats, you're never going to be able to do one thing really well. And so being able to have this support team that we have one person supply chain was able to take that from me. Somebody that has the experience, the expertise, that is just taking that, and even what we've seen so far in the little amount of time that this person's been on, we've seen some amazing things. And focusing on the right, kind of going back to how fast FiiZ grew, and it was, everything was awesome. I mean, it was, you could open a store anywhere, and people would come, and now that we're seeing that little bit of a downcline, I love it, because before, you didn't have to necessarily focus on the cleanliness of your store. You didn't have to focus on what truly makes a store successful. And now that stores are seeing this a little bit, it's getting them more involved in their store, and getting it back to the roots of what FiiZ is, and making sure that we have that experience. And when somebody comes to FiiZ, they're like, yeah, I want to go back to that store.
Right. And so now, like with all the stores that we have open, do you know the current number of stores that are open?
You probably do better than I do. I know it's over 60.
Yeah, it's close to 70, but
So my original thought was 67. Like that was what I was gonna say, but
let's go with 67. We're at 67 stores open.
Okay.
So let's see. Not all the stores are experiencing a downtrend.
Correct.
What are the differences? Who are the better? Like what characteristics make up a good franchisee?
So one of my jobs, and my job is a franchise business coach.
Right.
I've been with FiiZ since day one. I've got a lot of experience in the food industry and just how to run a FiiZ. So my main job is to get out there and support the FiiZ franchisees and find, like you were saying with the river, find the rocks that are obstructing the flow and help them. And the first step is I like to look at the store's P&L statement. And I can look through a P&L statement and just 30,000 foot view looking at some of the areas, whether it's labor, whether it's cost of goods, we've got ideals. And so we can see, okay, if a store is way over what it should be. And to answer your question, the stores that are the most successful, where when I'm looking at a P&L, they're hitting those targets, is they understand what's happening on a day-to-day basis.
Right.
They've got the finger on the pulse. Now, that doesn't mean they're working shifts every single day, because that's hard. I mean, FiiZ is an investment for a lot of people, and it's, you're not going to give your day job up just to, open up a single store. Maybe you are, but a lot of people, this is, another investment that they have.
Yeah.
But it's understanding and using the tools that we have with FiiZ to understand what is a healthy store, and just looking at the metrics of, looking at labor percentages based on sales on a daily basis, and seeing where those areas are for improvement, or seeing when there might be a certain slower time for your store, and then doing a promotion that might bring some more people in. So the success stories, and I see them all across the different, sales levels, whether you're top 10, whether you're down here, whether you're in the middle. If you are involved in your store, and like I say, you're not there mixing drinks. I mean, that's hard for an owner to be doing that, but at least understanding that, they're the ones that are successful.
Yeah, and I think even if they are mixing drinks occasionally, I think that's good for the employees.
For sure.
Like you don't want them to feel like you're asking them to do things that you're not willing to do yourself. Tasks are kind of below you. But anyways, I think this business model it's a simple business model. It's a great business model. The danger there is having franchisees come in and say, hey, this business model is going to run without me. And it can be very passive.
Mm-hmm.
But what I've seen just in my other experience with franchises and seeing other brands is, the franchisees that are the best are the ones that are constantly trying to think of ways to drive more traffic to their store. And local marketing, like going out and getting business contracts, like maybe every time a dealership sells a car, they come over to a FiiZ and get a free drink, and then the FiiZ will charge the account of that dealership. Catering contracts, and it's like I kind of think that this store can be fairly passive, but you've got to build out this machine. Like you've got to have over like certain benchmarks that you're hitting, over 500 Google reviews with a 5.5-star review.
Yeah.
10,000 followers on social media. And then also just going after those catering contracts and getting out into the community.
I love that you say that, because that's I have owned up to 4 stores. I've now currently sold those just to focus on the corporate side and being a support to all the stores. But one of the things that worked really well for me in my stores was going to the city, and they actually had anytime. So in Kaysville, anytime a new family moved into Kaysville, they had a package that they would go and give that, that person. And there was a FiiZ gift card that I would always give to, people moving into the community. And one thing that I truly feel like was a success for me is anytime that you can involve the community. So whether that's sponsoring a local football team, whether that's just doing a fundraiser for an elementary school, doing a spirit night, trying to raise money. When you do those things, people will support you.
Yeah.
There was a time that I actually had people from a school come to me and they would say, we come to you first because we know that you will help support the community. We don't go to this place, or this place because they have flat out told us no.
Yeah.
And I've always thought that for a community to support you, you will also need to support them.
Yeah.
And the more you can show that you're here for them, not just hey, I'm going to take your money and I'm just here for the business. But if you can get integrated into that community and show them that, that's what's going to be successful.
I think that leads us into the next part of this is like, who are we looking for in franchisees? And I think that wasn't a point that I was going to talk about, but I think it's crucial that you care about the community, that you're looking for ways to add value to where you live.
Yeah.
I look at entrepreneurs as kind of heroes that are just trying to create value wherever they can. And there's a lot of risk involved in that. That's why they're heroes to me. But going into a franchise, you kind of lower that risk, but you can still, because you're in business for yourself, but not
reinventing anything.
Yeah, you're not reinventing it. You're not by yourself.
Yeah.
You have a huge support group, and it's amazing what we're doing here at Stena, and we'll get lots of good information to you guys about what's coming down the pipeline. We'll have more group calls with the department head so that you can put a face to the name. But that's the first thing that we're looking for is franchisees who really care about the community and want to add value to it. And then there's a few like financial qualifications that you guys should be aware of. Like we want to see that you've got $75,000 in liquid cash that you can get your hands on tomorrow. And that's before you sign any agreement with us. It's not that we're going to take that $75,000. The franchise fee is only $40,000, but we don't want to be taking everything from you. And it kind of gives you some wiggle room before your business loan funds that you can pay for something so that you're not kind of stalled for a little while. So that's the first one. Also, this other one is more for lenders. It helps that if you've got a net worth of around $250,000, and then obviously no bankruptcies in the last 7 years, and we also perform a background check before you sign any franchise agreement with us. So we want to know who we're getting into business with. Okay, and then you mentioned don't reinvent the wheel. So let's kind of jump into that a little bit as well in upholding brand standards, which is another huge benefit to having a franchise model where you're in business for yourself but not by yourself. So can you kind of talk about that? And why?
Yeah, definitely. One thing that I've seen, and I like when you said at the very beginning that I've seen kind of the good, the bad, the ugly. I've seen it all, and I've seen where franchisees have maybe a certain store is tried to kind of start doing their own thing a little bit.
Yeah.
And I have seen firsthand where that actually hurts themselves and hurts the brand itself, the strength of the brand. And the more consistent we are across the board, and that's with how we treat the customers, how we look, the recipes, all of that, what that experience should be, that's what truly makes a brand strong. And that's one thing that we have strived to do, is to have the processes, the team, the support that we can keep that consistency going. Mm-hmm. And we feel like that we have created a very simple process to learn, that you shouldn't have that inclination of I need to reinvent something. I feel like, even though we're going to continue to create new fun drinks and FiiZ is going to change and evolve, we're going to stay ahead of that, and we're going to make sure that our processes can be duplicated nationally, and that goes to how we order, supply chain deliveries, just support, all that kind of stuff. That's what the Stena Group is doing, and things that I'm really excited about, and some of those things that we're working on that's going to help with that consistency in the long run. When I go back to saying you don't have to reinvent the wheel, I do want to kind of touch on how easy it is to operate a FiiZ, at least on the floor itself. I remember I brought my 13-year-old son to work one day just to see. Yeah. Within 30 minutes, he was able to make every single drink, and we had over 400 drinks on our menu. Every single drink, he was able to take orders, payments, and the reason why is because our system allows that you don't have to have things memorized. That just the simplification of recipes and labels and things like that make it so that somebody that's their first job, it doesn't take them 3 months to learn it.
Right.
And so, and that was one thing that, one of my favorite things about operating a FiiZ was giving that opportunity to the community, the individuals who were young, 15, 16, that might not have been able to get hired anywhere else because they didn't have any experience. And we're able to do that at FiiZ. And because our operations are so easy, it's not a stressful environment for the new employees and things coming on. And so I think that definitely helps create that experience of, this is fun, this is easy, but this is where, and I'm glad we kind of touched on this, because it's so simple, sometimes an operator, a store owner will take that for granted and just say, they've got it. It's so easy that it should run by itself. And that's where, going back to what makes a successful franchisee, is the one that, even though it is that easy, even though you could have brand new staff, never worked another job, all on the same shift, they can do it all. You still have to, understand and know and look at the data points and understand the community and understand just your business. Have that. I like just saying, having the finger on the pulse.
And I like that. It's about caring about your employees. It's about caring about the community. I wasn't going to talk so much about caring, but that's what you're bringing to my head is like, I think a lot of people might look at a brand like this, it's young kids that you're dealing with, and that can be kind of a headache. But I think the more committed you are and the more you care about being a leader and really helping them to develop into people that will go out into the marketplace later on, and this is really their first experience, you're really giving back in a lot of ways with a business like FiiZ.
I love it. One thing, when I'm talking to our franchise partners, and I'm looking for ways that they can be more successful, be more profitable, things like that. One of the questions I always ask is, do you know the name? Now, I understand a lot of owners aren't going to be in there day to day, okay? But I said, do you know the names of your employees? If you walked in right now, would the employees know who you are? Yeah. And a lot of times, they're like, if I walked in, half the staff wouldn't know who I am. And I would hear that. And I'm like, and this is where I would go with it. I said, I was a 15-year-old kid, back then. And I said, if you don't have that personal connection with the owner or the manager, you're not going to take your job serious. Yeah. You're going to kind of goof around. You might give a free drink to one of your friends that comes in. Right. But if you have that personal connection with the owner and you understand what that relationship is, and they, the owner trusts and knows the employees and shows them that, it's a win-win. They
want to see that you're invested in the business as well. They want to see that you're not above doing their job. They want to see that you believe in the success of the business and that you're doing everything that you can to drive more traffic to them, because you have faith that they're going to take care of all the people that you're driving to your store.
Yep.
And that helps with customer service immensely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I love it.
So let's jump into the relationship. What's the relationship like between franchisee and franchisor?
I really like this question because when you talk at the very beginning, you were kind of talking about transitions or different moments in the FiiZ kind of timeline. I've seen us evolve, even almost take a step back at some points where, at first it was you had to do what corporate said, and then we're like, that's not the right way. Let's get the franchisee really involved. And then that ended up kind of going, a little bit messy. And so, it's definitely been a process to get to where we are right now, which I truly feel like is the perfect balance of, I like to always go back to the family concept. Mm-hmm. The community has to be a part of the FiiZ family. They have to feel like they have just as much, almost invested kind of in the community in that as the business owner, the employees, a vendor, but our franchisees as well. And so everybody's input needs to be taken seriously. And one thing that I really like about the balance we have is we've got a franchisee that is assigned to every single, not franchisee,
FBC.
An FBC.
Yep.
That is assigned to every single franchisee that is their direct support. And that communication isn't just an email, very robotic. It's texts, it's calls, it's store visits, mm-hmm. It's whatever that franchisee needs. Yeah. We have a franchise coach that can go out and help them with that and collaborate and find ways to make those stores better. Another thing we do is we've got committees where we'll actually ask input of our franchisees of, hey, this is what we have, this is what we're kind of thinking about, what are your thoughts? What are the pain points that you see here? And actually making it more of a communication back and forth and being fully transparent. I found that when we are very tight with the information and we do not share it, that's when issues can come up. Or if we think because we've met behind a desk, on a Monday morning that mm-hmm. we've made the right decision without talking to the franchisees, that's where we get into an issue. And so understanding that the franchisees are the ones that are truly on the front lines. They're the ones that are seeing this on a day-to-day basis and using that knowledge and communicating and collaborating with them and showing value that what they're saying is, valid points. That's what makes a strong company.
Yeah, because they're probably more invested than we are.
Yeah.
It's their money that they're risking, and it's what I like about the Stena Group and this FiiZ team that we have is that we really care about the franchisees. And versus other brands that I've seen in the past, there's a lot of models out there like pump and dump. Let's sell as many franchises as we can and get as many stores open as we can. Let's get all these franchise fees into our bank account, and now we're thriving. But what we're doing when we're having our Monday meetings and what I've been blown away with is how much our leadership team cares about the franchisees maximizing their profits so that they're having a good time and that they feel really good about the investment that they made.
Mm-hmm. No, I agree for sure. I'm very passionate about this brand, and if I wasn't, then I would maybe have that mentality of, yeah, let's just go sell as much as we can. It doesn't matter. Let's just collect. But because I just have this pride in this company, and I'm so dedicated to this company that I want to make sure that every franchisee is having the same experience that I had when I started.
Yeah.
And so making sure that we're thinking about them and not just deciding on what we feel like is the right move, but incorporating them, making sure that their voice is heard. That's where the strength comes.
Yep, absolutely. So next big part is competitors, because not all the other brands think of their franchisees like that, and I think some of our big competitors are very much that pump and dump feel. I won't say any names, but swig. But what do you think is really our competitive advantage when it comes to why are people coming to our stores versus competitors?
Once again, I go back to the experience, that we are focused on the community. I think that goes a long way.
Yeah.
Our product is a superior product too, and I'm not just saying that because I've been here since day one. We have a superior product.
Yeah.
And I believe that wholeheartedly because I know what goes into our drinks. We put more ingredients in our drinks than any of our competitors, and we also have a consistency across all of our drinks. Doesn't matter if you get a 16 or a 44 ounce, it's going to taste exactly the same.
And how come that's not consistent with other competitors?
Because they are looking at just the numbers and what different margins and things are. They're not going after what the flavor profile is and what the customer truly wants.
Yeah.
We do a balanced approach that we look at it with cost in mind. We don't want something that we're losing money or we don't have really good margins on, but we want to make sure that we have the best product out there.
Yeah.
Consistency, exactly. And for me, that's key. Like when I heard that some of our competitors, if you get a 16 versus a 44, it is going to have a different taste. That blows me away. I'm like, how is that? I mean, how is that viable? And so, but that's just one thing that really truly sets us apart. I feel like we have a superior product. I know it. I'm not biased. I know we have a superior product.
Okay, so it's a premium product. People will come and it's a place where they like to hang out. That kind of trumps a lot of the trailers, the soda shacks, where if it's too hot, they're not going to hang out there. They're going to get their drink, hop back in their car. By the time they get back to their house, a lot of the ice is melted, or I don't know. But anyways, it's a cool environment. It's where they want to hang out. And then another big thing is with the people that do have the brick and mortar stores. These other brands, they cost a lot more. Build out cost is typically a lot more with these other brands that we're seeing. And with us, with the Stunning Group, what kind of projects that we're approving, they have lower overhead without sacrificing certain things that you don't want to compromise, like foot traffic. But typically, we're a cheaper build out. And that helps very much in the long run, where like if the economy starts to slow down, you don't have to hit certain revenues in order to keep your doors open.
Right.
You know, and when competition comes in and starts taking some market share, you're not as scared because you know in this down economy that you're doing better than the guy next door. Even if they are driving more traffic there, they're still trying to stay afloat. I mean, most of the time we're driving more traffic, we're hitting higher revenues, we're winning. But I think that's the main thing, is keeping your overhead low, which is what we do. And really what you're looking for it's how crucial is a drive-through?
I wouldn't open a store without one.
Okay. That's what I thought.
And so that's kind of my opinion. And people were saying, well, if you focus so much on the experience, why would you say that, that the drive-through is wouldn't you want people coming into the lobby to have that experience? And I tell them, I say, you can have the exact same experience in a drive-through than you can going into a lobby.
Yeah.
It's a little more challenging, but the way that you talk to a customer, the way that you treat them, even the way that your drive-through looks, paints that picture and makes that experience.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
So crucial. It's pretty much a requirement to have a drive-through.
Yes.
Okay, so, and then ideal square footage around 1,200 square feet?
Yeah. Most of the stores that I opened up were well under 14. Even, I think 12 is probably that perfect sweet spot. I know stores have done it less. There's stores that are 2,000 and above, but once again, kind of to your point, you get into those bigger buildings, you've got to have that much more traffic coming into your store. So I think this is a perfect footprint.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yep. And then the next thing that I have to talk about is a huge benefit to the Stena Group, but we've got a real estate team where a lot of questions that I ask is, how much support are you going to give us in building out our store, finding a location? Well, this is something that you don't see with other brands. Typically, all of that responsibility is on you, and it is all on you. But we've got another service that you do have to pay a little extra for, but it's project management services. We can help find a site for you. Oftentimes we've already found sites, so you can just come in and say, hey, I want that location, and then we'll negotiate the lease, and then we can even do the construction project management for you, which a lot of times, because we're so experienced in that, and our real estate team or our professionals, they will even help save you that much money for or more of the fee that it costs you to use their services. And it's a much smaller, and it's not so much of a headache for you.
I was going to say some of the biggest challenges that I had, especially in the early days, just not knowing and we didn't have, in the early days, we didn't have the support that we do have now. A lot of the challenges were in, finding buildings, and then just knowing what a good lease would be, and then just how you lay your, the building out. And so there's some really good benefit to that. Now that when you're talking about that, I'm like, wow, man, I wish I would have maybe had something like that, back when I was doing it, because I had no clue. Yeah. I knew I wanted to open a FiiZ, but I didn't know anything about construction. I didn't know anything about leases. And
yeah, absolutely. And then we even have an in-house architect, where those architect fees can get way high up there, and we've even spent over $20,000 in certain locations for architect work. But we've got an in-house architect right now that does it at a flat rate of just $12,500, and that's fantastic value for you right there. Next thing to talk about is how protected are the territories. So this is something where I've come in and in our FDD, it's not very laid out there for you. It kind of says 1 to 3 miles. And it doesn't give you like a strict, like, this is what it is. And it's a lot of based on population as well. Here at Stena, we're very in tune with what's going to cause cannibalization. We don't want our stores to be as close as they can, as without causing cannibalization. Let's see, I've got to be careful here. One thing that we have come to a conclusion on recently is when you sign a franchise agreement, you get a search area. And that's a 2.5 mile radius circle where you can put a pin down. So 5 mile diameter circle, and you can look for whatever places are prime in that area. You can even look beyond that circle, but you just have to know that when you do find a location, we have to approve that. We have to look at the cannibalization rate versus how close it is to another store. Because you want us doing that for you when you do have your store built out. And so on paper, the FDD is protected to the franchisor, like as much as possible. That's just how franchise disclosure documents are. But internally, we still have to do what's best for the franchisees, set them up for the most success that they can have.
I love that, because when FiiZ started, and I opened the first franchise location, this was top of mind. When we started expanding, we didn't understand the different markets, and we didn't understand really the cannibalization effect. And so we sided on, extremely cautious, and we would lock in a 5 mile radius per store. Yeah. And we're like, we have to do that. We have to protect our franchisees. Well, you do that, and then the next thing you know, in that 5 mile radius, you have all the different competitors that have come in, and you're like, you have a competitor come in, you're like, well, my sales didn't drop, you know, and you're like, oh, it wasn't that big of a deal.
Right.
And it even led me, so I actually opened up in that small town Kaysville that I was talking about in the beginning. I opened up 2 stores.
Like
one
30,000 population?
34.
34?
Yeah, and it's 1.1 mile away from each other.
Okay.
And a lot of people were like, you're crazy.
Yeah.
What are you doing?
Yeah.
And just understanding that in that town, that it was a smaller town, but there was a freeway that divided it, and just understanding the demographics and just the layout, all that stuff factors into where you can put a store.
Yeah.
I mean, I've seen Starbucks that you have one on this corner and one on this corner, and they're both successful because it's the accessibility, it's the entrance of how you get in and out of those. So there's so many things that goes into that, and I always say, as a franchisor, we would be dumb if we put in a store that was going to cannibalize and take revenue away, because ultimately that, you know, we benefit from that as well. So we're going to take that very serious in creating these areas, but not so cautious that competitors are going to come in and we're going to be like, oh my goodness, what were we thinking? Right.
And so in Kaysville, do those 2 stores kind of cater to a different demographic or a different like population?
Yeah, well, what's interesting is there is a freeway that kind of divides it a little bit. And so it does kind of create this division.
Yeah, Kaysville and West Kaysville.
Yeah, so it literally is the people in West go to the West store and the people in the East, you know, go to this one. And so you're almost dividing that 3,400 in half. And those stores are top 10 performing stores.
Yeah.
And so a lot of people thought I was crazy and saying you're going to cannibalize, and I saw about 5% cannibalization, which I knew there'd be a little bit.
So in most cases we probably won't go 1 mile away from the store.
Right.
But if it does make sense, and we can prove like the data supports that this is a completely different group and this is a different group, then there's not going to be much cannibalization.
Right.
So the bottom line is, we're here at the Stunted Group, franchisor. We're doing everything that we can to make sure that your specific store that you're opening up, that you're investing your money into, is set up for success.
Correct. Yep.
I think we've covered a lot of great material here. Thanks, Joel, for helping out and
anytime.
Giving your experience, everything that you've seen with the FiiZ brand. I love the energy that you have and how much love you have for this brand, which I think is great for people to see when they're just coming in and they want to know what the good, bad, and ugly is. You've been through it all, and you love it, and you're here to stay for a long time.
Yep.
So most of you have already booked an appointment with me. This is kind of your first step through the process. It's going to be a one-on-one call, and I'll walk you through what it takes to purchase a FiiZ location, and hopefully everything makes sense where you can join our family. But on that call, that's also going to be a good time to ask any questions that you've had from this conversation, and then I'll walk you through what the next steps are.
Perfect.
Okay, thanks, Joel.
Yeah, you're welcome.